Hi there, we're bringing you part 2 of the Conquest of Gaul Hail Caesar box set, and this is all the figures painted and based up, just to show you what I did with them and what you can do with them. Given that this is a starter army, I already have a considerable amount of Romans already, and the Gauls are a new thing for me, so it was quite an interesting little project for me to do. And you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Gaul's mine, and the little tiny little Roman legion is yours.
Yes, yes. You already know what's in the box from the last one I did. I'm just going to show you what I actually did with the box. You can see at the back the Romans. If I zoom in on them.
No, you don't have to do that. I'm the cameraman.
Right, you do that then. These are the Romans you get in the box. There were a few spare Romans when I did this legion up, where we base 4 heavy infantry to a base and have 1 base for each stamina point of the regiment. So we ended up with a few Romans left spare, so I had a little bit of fun with 2 of them. One of them I will show you in a minute. One of them is here, and he's Roman, and I made him a centurion, and he's I'm going to use him as an extra general for my army. You don't get any generals and stuff in the box, so it's quite easy to make them. And given that I had a few spare Romans left, that's what I did with them. I made him into a little general here, a little centurion who can command the troops. So if you don't want to fork out immediately and get a couple of boxes of generals and stuff, you can actually make your own out of the box. It's easy enough to do. They're painted green for the 7th Augusta, I think they were. 7th Augusta?
Yep.
Yeah. So they're painted green for the campaign in Britain and later on the Roman Civil War. They were stationed mainly in Germany, but they did get moved around a little bit. So that's the legion I've got there. Oh, they also were some of the troops who fought in Judea, hence the reason I've chosen them. Now moving around to the Celts.
Whee!
Right, do you want to zoom in on the general?
General. Put him in the middle of the battlefield there.
Right. This guy I've done up as a Celtic general, because I have no officers for my Celts at the moment. I'm going to be getting some, but this is the starting point of an army, and I've done this guy up as a sort of general commanding officer. And as you can see, one of the spare Romans I have here, and he's wounded. He's on his knees and his hands are tied behind his back, and his shield's there with a few arrows stuck in it, which is one of the bolts from the ballista, the Scorpio. And I've done him up as a, he's either a prisoner who's about to be executed or whatever. He's just a unfortunate guy.
What zoomed in?
The best way I had of depicting a senior officer was to stick the hawk on his helmet, because I thought that looked really cool. Unfortunately, on unpacking them, I found that one of the hawks was broken, so I didn't use them for command for my main units. When I get a few more Gaul boxes, I'll have a few left over, so I'm going to stick them on later to my figures. But that was just inconvenience during posting. Over to the next thing, which is the skirmish troops. Now, when I base them up, there's enough. If you base them 3 figures to a base, like I do, all medium and all like warbanded type infantry, I do 3 to a base to make them totally different to the Romans, who are all ordered and in lines. I ended up with obviously some spare figures. You could actually base all 60 miniatures and get yourself 3 full regiments with 6 bases to a regiment. But however, I wanted a few skirmishers, and so given that I was going to make this video, I thought I'd show you how you can make your own skirmishers and stuff. And here they are. These guys are slingers. You can see they've all got slings there, and that's them. They're just sort of running around throwing stones at people. And then we'll go on to the javelin men. These are just the standard figures in the box, although I have added a javelin to their arms from the Greek box set. I've got a box set of Greeks which I'm using for my Jewish army, and these are the javelin men that you get in them. Oh, sorry, I got a lot of spare javelin arms, and so I swapped out the original Celtic arms and stuck a javelin on, and they fit perfectly well, and they look quite good too. So that gives me some skirmishers for my Celtic army. Now over to the Celts.
Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. Da.
These are the Celts. I'm going to be getting some more soon, so I've done 3 command stands up ready for when they're done. And you can see the command stands, they've got a nice hog, a elk and a deer, stag, whatever, one of them. And another hog, where I've done 1 hog in bronze and 1 in red, just so you can see an instant difference between regiments. And there they are. I've mixed in the armoured soldiers with the unarmoured soldiers because they were very much mixed. With stuff like the Dacians I've separated out all the armoured soldiers and made them into sort of household troops, and I've made everyone else into a regular soldier, so I wanted to do a bit of a mixture. With this, everyone is basically a huge mass of soldiers, and I also really enjoyed painting the shields, which was a lot of fun. Because the Celts had very individualistic shields, they painted their own shields and stuff, so that was a fun little project to do. So there you have it, that is the entire box set as it comes, and that's what it looks like when you can base it up. Obviously you don't have to do the things I've done with it, this was just to show you the different things you can do with the box when you get on to doing it. Any questions for you?
Why are the Celts beheading that Roman?
Something the Celts did. They used to cut heads off a lot as trophies.
But the Romans, like, when they took prisoners, they put them in prison and waited for a while.
Well, usually they'd take soldiers prisoner and then either parade them through the streets and make them into slaves, which wasn't a bad thing compared to how the Celts would treat you when they got hold of you. The Celts would also take a prisoner by the Romans, would often be released as long as they promised to fight for the Romans, particularly the royal families and the posh people. Anyone in a chariot, really, and with a big sword would have to pay. Their family would often pay a certain amount of money to get them back, which was something that Caesar used in his day, not so much in Imperial Roman day. And of course, the great general in Britain who fought against the Romans when the Romans invaded Britain, they dragged him all the way back to Rome, covered in chains, and then gave him a house just off the main square and a salary, and he fitted in quite nicely with Roman society, which had a tendency of putting off Celts following anyone who said they wanted to fight the Romans. The Celts would say, a guy would stand up and say, hey, let's rebel against the Romans, and the Celtic warriors, who were the ones who were going to be doing the dying at the end of the day, said, well, why are we going to follow you? You're just after a pension, you know?
And a villa.
And a villa in Rome. So, you know.
And importance.
So if you lose,
while we die in the battlefield.
Yeah, if you lose, you get to live in Rome with a nice posh house, and you get to hang out with the current emperor, and we die. And the Romans
so
take
that means
the prizes.
we're not going to follow you, or we're just going to kill you.
Yeah, so that pretty much ended the rebellions in Britain, and the last rebellion in Britain was under Boudica, and that was not a popular revolt. Only 2 tribes joined in, her own tribe and one of the others, and the rest of the Celts kind of kept their heads down and waited to see what the Romans would do next, because they knew that when the Romans got annoyed, they got annoyed. And let's face it, what was the race that Boudica belonged to?
Iceni.
The Iceni, yeah, the Iceni were entirely exterminated. You know, genocide. That's, you know, you don't want that in your future. Now, the Romans do not play when it comes to war, and if they defeat you and you become a client state of theirs, and then you decide to rebel again, they will pretty much wipe you off the face of the earth and you will cease to exist as a people. They did that 32 times in the history of the Imperial Rome. Not a pleasant thing, but it does stop people invading you. It kind of puts tribes off from rebelling. Now I should also go on to one other point. Someone mentioned on my last video about the Conquest of Gaul box is that the Romans aren't the right period for the Gauls. And certainly for the Conquest of Gauls, they're not. Julius Caesar, his troops wore chainmail. They were Marian Roman troops with oval shields and chainmail. This box would really be better for the British, to be honest, because by the time the Romans invaded Britain, they were in segmentata, imperial armour, and they had the oblong shields. So these are the right troops for the invasion of Britain under
Nero's cousin.
good old Uncle Claudius. Yeah. And these are the right troops for that. And Vespasian was actually a commander during that period. And that's it really. The Gauls can be used as Celts, they can be used as British Celts, although the British tended to, these guys have given them all sort of little bits of writing stuff on them, and a few of them have got elks painted on the chest and stuff. The British didn't tend to do that, they tended to paint themselves entirely blue.
Yeah.
So they were completely blue, certainly in Caesar's time. And
it sealed up wounds.
Yes, it
It helped
pretends.
himself heal, which is actually pretty good.
If they got injured, the blue dye was also a killed bacteria. So if they got injured, they didn't die of their wounds. They had less chance of dying of their wounds.
Which is very clever.
Yeah, well, it's trial and error. Thousands of years of trial and error teach humans not to do stupid things. So painting yourself blue in battle, the people who did that survived. And the ones who didn't do that died of injuries, cuts and tetanus and things
Which
like
is
that.
them.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's useful. The Romans didn't tend to paint themselves blue. Wasn't a thing they
They
went
had
in.
armour and a massive shield.
Yeah, they wore armour, had a really big shield and went around in large groups. And if
the flanking a Roman didn't really help you or anything.
not really. So the Romans, and they would also sleep in large fortified camps every night. So they didn't believe in taking the dangerous line. They preferred to play it safe. The Celts were a little bit more rushy. They tended to rush in a lot
Such
more.
as landing in England, marching a couple of yards and building a fortress and just having a little nap.
Yeah. Yeah.
In like 5 minutes.
Or like Julius Caesar, who landed in England and he brought all his boats onto the shore and made them into a big circle and turned them into a huge fortress, which is an instant fort. It's because boats are defendable, and that's what he did with his boats. And it saved a lot of his boats from being sunk by a storm that came. He did lose some ships due to bad weather, and so he learnt to get ships out of the sea, because it's dangerous having Roman-built boats in the British Channel, because it's not particularly nice weather, even back then. Well, it was decidedly warmer in Britain at the time.
Hence, too hot.
Yeah.
That's why we never wore anything.
Britain and most of Northern Europe was rainforest at the time. It was tropical weather. That's why the Celts ran around naked, because it was hot, so they ran around naked. And people in really hot countries tend to run around with a lot less clothing on, or a Bermuda shirt or something.
Until they see a Roman and then wish they had some armour.
Yeah. So, have we missed anything?
Maybe a Scorpio.
The Scorpio, right.
And the little fence next to it. I think maybe we should describe what you built there.
Okay, well here we have the Scorpio, which is a Roman, a very small Roman ballistae. Ballista basically means something that throws something. It's Greek. These were designed by the Romans, were used by Republican Rome, and were particularly complicated pieces of machinery. They were used by the Romans to support infantry. They were basically the equivalent of like a battalion gun if you do black powder, if you play black powder. And they were basically fired bolts, and they were bolts of huge, massive arrows, and they were extremely accurate. You could actually pick one man out and shoot him So you can actually aim at individuals. Rather than most artillery, you fire in the general direction. This was a sniper weapon. This little thing here. And you could actually target individual human beings, which was quite scary for the people you were firing at. The Romans went into them for a big way. They usually had, I think, 2 per, or was it 4 per?
Legion.
No, century.
Century?
So that would be 4 for every 80 men, roughly. So they had a lot of them. They were quite technical to make. They were quite complicated machines. But the Romans were quite advanced and had a properly built up industry that could supply that sort of equipment. Sadly, the barbarians never really got around to doing it because they never had an ordered society to be able to make artillery. So even if they could get all the Roman artillery, the ropes would wear out and they had no ability to make new bits and new parts to replace them. Except in the Dacians,
Yeah.
who were the only barbarians, or people we would call barbarians, who could actually field modern Roman equipment, but modern Roman weapons, because the Dacians were supplied them by the Romans and also taught how to make them. Next question.
That's all the questions?
Well, that's the blister. That's basically it. As I said, this is the beginning of a new project. Obviously the Romans will just add on to the Romans have already got. But the Celts are the beginning of a new project. The great thing about Celts is you can use them as allies to most of the armies you're going to be playing when you do Hail Caesar if you're doing Romans. So you can use them as allies to, well, you could go right back to Hannibal's time. You can go right back to Republican Rome and use them. You could go use them as German allies. You could use Germans as allies of these guys. They're in the rulebook. If you look them up, there's a section for Germans, set of German allies. And you can use them, of course, for Eastern Russia, the campaign there, and you can use them against the Parthian Empire. Because they came down into the Sacar region, and they were all Celts, pretty much dressed the same as Celts in those days. So they're pretty useful figures to have, and you can use them in all sorts of situations. So you don't just have to stick to doing the Gallic Wars, you can use Celts all over the place. And of course you can use them as Roman allies as well. So they're a multi-use army, aren't they, really? Mm-hmm. And they're your army.
Yes.
Yes, they're my son's army. And he's going to be commanding them, which means I'm going to be winning a lot more battles in future.
No.
No? Oh, okay. Right, so that is the based up box. We're now going to play a game with them and show you what it's like.
Sort of test or what like.
Yeah, just a quick play test with them to show you what you can do with the figures that are just in the box. So if you're just starting out with Hail Caesar, you can actually play a game with this box. Everything's here and inside it, and I don't know where I put the rule book. I would show it here, but I'll do it in a minute. And so watch the next video for the playtest, and we'll show you how the game works.
See ya.
Oh yeah, remember to subscribe, leave a comment,
Like,
and I hope you watch the next video because I'm going to, for the first time in a long time, beat my enemy.
you beat twice so far. And what about since? Apart from, no, 3 times now. Yes. Well, they'll find out.
Right, so there we go. Have fun and excitement. Thank you very much for watching, and watch later.
See ya.